we are going to choose the SDG award winners in 17 categories in total, when the 1,000 applicants are full. And I reassure you that there are so many applications coming in from so many interesting startup projects. Being quick is really very advisable. My colleagues from the marketing department have really prepared a very informative and stunning video about the SDG awards that give you an impression about the about the aim of the SDG awards, what we really want to achieve with the SDG awards. So I let the moving images speak for themselves, and gonna show you the video. And I'd say grab your popcorn, but it's a bit too early for popcorn, so enjoy the video and have your morning coffee. Okay, so yeah, as I said, the UTech Chamber is going to award the SDG awards, yeah, let me first welcome you, dear participants. Let me first welcome you, dear speakers and panelists. I am very much looking forward to a great session today. Dear participants, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. You're all muted, but we are very open for any kind of discussion. Please ask your questions in the chat, because we have managed to get so many three very renowned experts on their field. It's really worth asking as many questions as you can. But before we start deep diving into our topic, let me just quickly introduce the work of the UTech Chamber to you, because I mean, it's really interesting to see our cosmos, our the topics in total we are dealing with. Today, you are attending a webinar of the Finance Alliance, but we have so many other interesting topics to cover. If you're interested in regional markets, feel free to attend, for example, a webinar of the China Alliance. If you're dedicated to digital transformation, IoT, mobility, or digital transformation alliance webinars might be just the interesting points for you. And in total, we have like over 200 webinars per year with over 684 speakers, and today you see 3 of them. And we have over 20 expos, meaning hybrid events, virtual exhibitions, all kinds of this. And a number I'm really especially proud of is the fact that plus 50,000 registrants make our webinars and our events really, really successful. 90% of them are company owners and decision makers. 10% are going to be company owners and decision makers pretty soon, I'm sure. What do you get if you're UTech Chamber advocates? You get a #1 tech network with over 400 networking meetings. You get to meet speakers and panelists with exclusive market insights. You get business opportunities, and we'll inform you. We have experts working on the highly interesting topic of EU projects and funding. And you get access to the UTech ecosystem, meaning that we share exclusive insights with you, white papers. We're currently working on position papers. You'll get a copy of our magazine called Vision for Europe. You get newsletters and all kinds of stuff. You get access to exclusive programs like digital transformation supports, climate action partnerships, and you get access to our tech.forum, where we offer virtual expos, virtual booths, and a follower database for you, just to mention a few things out of many. Yeah, so if you have any questions regarding this, feel free to contact us and try our matchmaking tool on tech.forum. But now I have the big pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker to you. Efi Ben-Arzi has found the time to be our keynote speaker in this webinar. Efi has a strong international background. He's originally from Israel, but had spent decisive time in Europe and in the US. He has a very diverse background in companies, excellence in various industries, manufacturing, services, high-tech, healthcare, startups, just to mention a few out of many. And he has carried out leading operational and business transformation to improve companies in the past and in the future. He is very much dedicated to bring in impact investing forward. He is really the best person, one of the best persons to talk to when it comes to impact investing. I'm going to stop my introduction. I'm going to give you the presenter's rights. Efi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me also as a board member of the Finance Alliance to take part in the webinar. And I will try not to make it boring and keep the discussion more open. Can you see the slides? Joyce, can you see the slides?
Yes, I can see the slides.
Okay, great. Okay, good. So I want to share some trends and recommendations about impact investing. And now, And I want to talk and present some data on the global level, comparable data, and to talk also what is impact investing in general, because a lot of people are getting confused about it, and then to give some recommendations that maybe will be the first generation of discussion for the webinar. Okay, so there is a myth that impact, and if you're dealing with the SDGs, for example, you are not worth investing because you are somehow not profitable. But it's totally not true. The professional definition of impact startup is 50% social good or environment good oriented, but also 50% of that is profit oriented. So it should be very interesting to investors. If you just see the Israeli, let's say, going to be unicorn V, who wants to be the Google for volunteering in corporates, we just raised $12 million seed round, and now they are growing massively in the US. It's quite a lot for impact investment. So you can see that companies are actually both bringing social value and great profit. And I want to start to share how big is the opportunity business-wise. So there is 12 trillion growth opportunity by all the SDGs. This is data from March company. And you can see the leading mobility systems, the new healthcare solution, and energy efficiency, of course, but also others. So there is a lot of growth opportunity and a lot of business to do in that domain. You can see that, for example, 40% global freshwater demand supply gap by 2023, 100 million people at risk of falling back into poverty by 2030 if climate change will not halted, and people without access to basic sanitation. You can see the numbers. So there is a lot of potential, and the opportunity of impact startups are really, really big. What do you need to know? Just in general, so 12.9 billion raised for impact startups globally in Q1 2022. It's quite a large amount. Europe and North America lead the impact startup investment. I will share more details in the next slides. Excuse me. And clean energy startups dominate impact funding. Fortunately, there is other SDGs to take care of, and those are less developed, but we will talk about it. And if you can see the comparison, so the European impact funding is half of the North American compared to the third of overall VC. So it might be half of the North American, but in general, Europe is leading with 15% of the total VC investment. So 15% of the total VC investment in Europe is for impact startup. That's also part of the reason that I chose to live in Europe, because I think it's very important for all of our future. So Europe is leading in that sense. And if you can see that, as I said, impact startup raised 12.9 billion globally in Q1. It's a little bit down 15% year to year. But if you see the venture capital investment, it's grew significantly, and there are some very big rounds in Q1 of 2022. You can see some startups in renewable energy, 575 million round, 1.4 billion. It's a lot. There are some very interesting, impressive cases of funding. And there are a lot of impact unicorns, which is very interesting. First of all, for the audience, unicorn is the definition of over $1 billion valuation company. But when everybody talks about unicorn, they usually think of deep tech related startups. But 179 impact unicorns globally, and 40% of them just added in the last 15 months. I think this data is quite amazing, and actually it's quite a lot of impact unicorns in the world now. Just to give some benchmark, okay? So in Israel alone, there are 100 unicorns. In UK alone, there are 43 unicorns nowadays. Just to give some feeling how to compare. If you see the investment by SDG, if you divide the SDG into people, planet, and the last one is agnostic, you can see that the investment in 2021 versus Q1 22 per SDG. So as I said, the climate action is leading, and affordable clean energy. And I think it's important also to put some focus on other SDGs as well. But this is currently the trend. And I want to start giving some recommendations. So first of all, I think that impact investing key elements needed to be defined. So I call it intentionally, and you have to contribute to actual social and environmental outcomes. It has to be measurable, okay? And the impact needs to be measured and reported on clearly and reliably. I think when now the legislation is changing and the companies will have to report sustainability efforts, for example, in their financial results, it will increase the measurability part of the impact investment. As I said, they need to provide social environmental benefits that will not have otherwise occurred without investment. So I call it additionality. So it has to be added value of the investment. and it needs to be scalable. So scalability is very important, not only in a regular startup, but also for impact investing, because as I said, it's 50% also oriented, and also scalability is important to get the social or environmental impact. So it has to contribute to growth of the industry. Excuse me. If you want to see some examples of how to measure, so you can see the numbers. For example, 14,204 tons of pollution avoided being treated. It's equivalent to the emissions and so on. 3 million people, 0.4 million people, and that's by SDG. So this is just an example how to make impact and measurable. This one, 0.4 million affordable housing unit supplied, for example. And my recommendation for investors, if you want to invest in impact startups, and I usually invest with the investor syndicate in regular startup. I think I also invested in impact. So you have to have some impact ambition or a mission, if you want. So the expectation of the investment committee, organization, and stakeholders. And you need to review the current exposure of themes of new opportunity potential across the asset classes. And you need to define and review the potential for reporting on the impact outcomes and the measurability. And just to share some personal experience, why is it important? So I want to share my own story. It's a startup, a German startup called Votrookie, wants to increase democratic participation among young people in Germany. And they developed a whole experience with avatars and mobile application dedicated to the young generation, Gen Z. And actually, why is it important? Because it's actually working. And this digital experience that the young generation are experiencing in the, let's say, in the metaverse, it's actually sending them to the streets to take part, to demonstrate, to take projects that is affecting Germany. So why is it important? Because it's actually working. And in case you have any questions, just a little bit more about me. So I'm working with different programs around the world, startups from US to Africa to Europe for startups and others. I'm also independent consultant, and I work with different technologies and organizations. And if you want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you have questions after the webinar, please feel free to text, to email, to find me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer. That's it.
Thank you so much, Evi. Marcin has handed in one question to you, and I'd like to have it clarified. He asked, what is the source of the data you were referring to when you were talking about investments per SDG?
Yeah, so the investment per SDG was, let me see the presentation. It's recent reports from Deal Room, Tech Nation, Impact City, and so on. So it's based on reports of some leading organization related to startups.
Okay, good to know. Thank you very much. Brenda Pennell is on our panel. She's based in The Hague, where she creates impact through supporting and investing local entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises in fragile markets. But Brenda, I'm sure I didn't introduce your work to full extent, so please feel free to share what you do with our participants.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Joyce. And it's a pleasure to be involved in this webinar. So thank you very much for inviting me. So I work in impact investment as an investor, not in the startup space like Effie, but investing in more established companies that are seeking capital to grow. And one of the reasons why we are focused on those more established companies with some operational track record is because the focus, or the impact focus of our investments is fragile and emerging markets. And that brings in with it a lot of risk, but also a lot of opportunity for creating impact. And we feel that that can best be balanced through focusing on companies that are still in that startup phase. And through Anona Dicto Impact Finance, we manage a couple of impact investment funds looking primarily at agricultural value chains, trying to support agricultural producers, particularly those that source from smallholders and small producers in fragile and low-income countries, to access premium global markets. With the impact model, that access to the premium markets will create a virtuous circle of your production of good quality products that achieve good prices, which then result in better incomes for farmers in those markets. And I also do some work in the SME advisory space, again with a focus on sub-Saharan Africa and certain countries in Asia, to try and use your local talent to support local businesses to perform more efficiently, and to be able to put together a platform for them to be able to grow and to scale, so that through their growth and scale, they can create the impact objectives that do align with our organization, such as job creation for women and youth and other marginalized populations.
Thank you, Brenda. You've mentioned the markets you're dealing with, but where do you see the most important features of the regional market? Where do you see the differences to European markets, and what are the differences between Asian and sub-Saharan markets? I mean, it of course depends on the business sector you're dealing with, but do you see any differences in general?
Yeah, at a very high level, although I do recognize that making generalizations is very sensitive, because they are such diverse regions. Europe is very diverse, sub-Saharan Africa is very diverse, and Asia is also very diverse. But just at a very strategic level, I think that no one would dispute that in sub-Saharan Africa there's still a huge potential in the market for the right kind of business that has identified the right opportunity to really scale rapidly and achieve huge impact. And because of where the market across the continent is at the moment, there are still opportunities to be very disruptive. So a good recent example is mobile money through M-Pesa, but there are probably still similar opportunities to achieve that level of disruption at that scale, which doesn't really carry across to much more mature developed markets like Europe. And in sub-Saharan Africa, I see many very, very highly motivated entrepreneurs, and they are absolutely determined to make their business a success. And in the impact space, I do see some contrast with that and some European-based impact-focused companies that I have met. And I have come across European-owned businesses either operating in Europe or operating in Africa, but with that European ownership structure, that come to me as an investor with the view that I should invest in them because they're doing something good, not because their business is has the potential to really do well and perform. So I do find that very interesting. But I don't think we can also skirt around the challenges that there are in sub-Saharan Africa concerning infrastructure and governance. And in Asia, again, I'm very hesitant to generalize, but perhaps you could say that the entrepreneurial approach in Asia is perhaps more recognizable to us in Europe. So more similar to how we in Europe would approach setting up a business and growing a business. And there's also the advantage of stronger economic growth in the region anyway, which does make it easier for a company to operate and grow.
Okay, these were really interesting insights, but you've mentioned the fragility of markets as well. What is your personal definition of fragility, and what is, in your opinion, the definition of fragility in the investment context?
Okay, so fragility is, I think, well, in my opinion, an aggregation of different factors, such as weak governance, poor infrastructure, and severe inequality in society. And those factors come together to increase the vulnerability of that country to violence, social unrest, lack of law and order, and capital controls, all of which can affect investment. So if we're looking to invest in a fragile market, then we have to have a good understanding of what that fragility, what the fragility context is, given that it can look quite different in different countries that we might be looking at.
And does your daily work make fragility of the markets decrease? How does the fragility of the markets, how is the fragility of the markets affected by your daily work? I mean, in a perfect world.
Yeah. Well, from an investment perspective, we hope that we can invest in fragile markets, but there are some red lines. If a context is just too fragile, then it's unlikely that what we are doing is making any difference, and what we are doing suddenly becomes unsustainable. So if a context is so fragile that we won't be able to get our investment capital out of the country so that we can then recycle it, then we're not able to invest. And we need there to be a minimum standard within the judicial system so that in principle, we will be able to enforce contracts, even though we recognize that there will be lots of challenges should we ever have to go to court. The fact that there is a contract makes for a better investment proposal, and also contributes to that governance issue that that I did highlight as one of the features of fragility. And we also have to be aware of the fact that fragile contexts can throw up very unexpected challenges that can affect the operations of a business. And I've had recent experience investing in Mali, and then seeing the impact on our investees that was not necessarily the military coups themselves, but the sanctions that were then applied to the country in response to that upheaval. And there was those sanctions which would have been much harder to predict that ended up affecting our investees. But nevertheless, we think it's really important to still persist in supporting fragile contexts with investment capital, because in our theory of change, we believe that supporting SMEs to grow can address some of those root causes of fragility, particularly the inequality. So a growing SME can create jobs, and we can apply an impact lens to those SMEs to prioritize the SMEs that are creating jobs for women and youth and other marginalized populations, in the hope that this will start to address very entrenched inequality within that society. And we also hope that well-functioning SMEs can lead to improved governance. And a really nice example again in Mali is one of my early investees was in the waste management sector. And as they grew, they realized that in order to really scale and really change the waste management sector in the country, they would have to effectively lobby and guide government to prioritize waste management more, but also have a much more modern approach to the waste management sector. And the investee itself, they had all the expertise, and they also had a lot of experience of waste management outside of Mali as well, that they had brought into their business in Mali to help it perform better and do something really different in waste management. And they were really teaching the government ministries about how to manage waste in the country, and that's leading to slowly but surely much better governance in the waste management sector in their countries. But all that considered, there is a need to be very sensitive to the causes of fragility within a country. And another quite high profile investor in fragile context is the IFC. And the IFC have a very clear framework about do no harm when they make the investments that they make. And I think that's a very good policy, because you may find a business that is really well managed and has great potential. But if the success of that business comes at the expense of another group within the population, then if you are applying your do no harm policy within that fragile context, you probably shouldn't make that investment.
And what is your own personal impact investing vision for the next decade?
Well, I think that the impact investing sector is in a transition period. There's been a lot of accusations of greenwashing, and even The Economist magazine had a huge feature on ESG and all of the flaws in the ESG approach to investments at the moment. And I think, sadly, the greenwashing accusations are legitimate in many cases. And I think that's not helped by a lack of standardization of what exactly impact is and standards amongst the ESG. And if anything, there are just too many certifications now as well. So it's really hard for an investor potentially interested in investing in ESG to be able to make those decisions about what exactly they want to invest in and what they can invest in. And there's still a dichotomy between financial returns versus social returns. So within that starting point, my hope, my vision is that the impact investing sector can develop a much clearer narrative about impact that is independent of commercial interests and financial interests. So really focusing on what are the benefits of making this investment socially. And I think that can be helped by greater use of technology, such as blockchain technology, to increase transparency and accountability. So it's much easier for a potential investor or a potential funder to see what the impact is at various points in a value chain, for example. And I really hope that all the funds that say they're impact first will really mean that they are impact first. And I just finish with a small anecdote about a fund pitch that we were doing. So the fund is focused purely on SME investment in fragile markets, and recognizing all of the challenges and risks of having a mandate like that. Our proposition was preservation of capital in real terms and significant social impact returns. And we were talking to a particular DFI about this. And bear in mind that DFIs are supposed, they have a mandate to be a frontier investor and you take on risks that perhaps other private sector investors wouldn't, in the hope that they can crowd in other private sector capital. So we explained this proposition to this particular DFI, and they laughed out loud. They said they couldn't accept that financial return despite their mandate for the impact return. So I would really like to see impact first, meaning impact first.
Thank you very much, Brenda. This might be a very good headline for our after post. Manuel Nieto is the third one in row, and besides from many other things that stirred my interest in preparation, I found it really interesting that Manuel is the one dealing with pre-seed rounds. So Manuel is Valencia based. He is the regional manager of First Drop Venture Capital and was previously a regional manager of Demium, the most active venture capital in the south of Europe. But Manuel, I'm sure this is not everything you really want to let our audience know more about you as well. Please proceed.
Thank you, Joyce, for the presentation and for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to share this panel with all these amazing people. And as you said, basically, I am the founder and the general partner of First Drop VC. First Drop VC is an impact fund that we invest in pre-seed companies. When we talk about pre-seed, it's companies that normally they don't have metrics, they just have an MVP, they are really starting. That I think that is something that is really needed. Normally, always we invest in the first investment round with family, friends, and fools, with business angels, because normally there are lots of funds that they want to invest in pre-seed, but they want to invest cheap and when people have metrics. For me, that is not pre-seed. That's normally like seed or pre-series A. And what we do is basically we have a pool of LPs that are serial entrepreneurs that they already made an exit, an IPO, an M&A, and they want to help us with our accelerator program in order to help these entrepreneurs in order to succeed. No? There are, for sure, I think in this stage, in the pre-seed stage, is the moment that you can help more entrepreneurs in order to give some tips so they are going to exit their companies, to make success cases. So that's basically what we are doing. We create this fund in Luxembourg, so we are an international fund, but we are putting the focus especially in the south of Europe, eastern part of Europe, because now I'll explain it later, but I think that are parts of Europe that they also need a lot of help and a lot of funding.
Why do you support the pre-seed startups you've mentioned with an accelerator program?
Well, basically because there are different kinds of entrepreneurs. There are entrepreneurs that they are serial entrepreneurs that they already created several companies, and when they start, more or less they know how to do it. But there are first-time entrepreneurs, people that they come from big four companies, from banks and different stuff, but they don't have expertise sometimes in marketing. They don't have knowledge of how to raise an investment round. And normally when you give just like 2-3 tips, or you work with them directly, Effie, for example, he works with Demium or with different startups. So when you put a good investor, a good mentor with them directly, the success rate of the companies goes like really, really high. No, so it's like really important. What we create with them is we invest directly in the company. So we are not an accelerator. We are a VC. So we invest in these companies, and after we have an accelerator program of 3 months, where we invest in these companies 200K, and in the first month we work with them settling the KPIs for the next 3 months, working in impact, measuring the impact. That I think that is one of the most important things, which is the sustainable development goal that they are going to measure, how to measure it. A second month of growth, of open innovation, working with other companies, with other businesses, technology, and a third month basically of investment readiness, like prepare the financial statements of the company, the pitch deck, get in contact with other VCs in Spain, in Europe, and after that we have a demo day. In the moment that we finish this stage, our own LPs can invest also in the companies. So for us, it's a privilege to have this kind of LPs, because for them, this is like a showroom for them. They invest in our fund, so they have the returns of the investment, but also they can have a pool of projects where they can invest after the program.
Thank you very much for these detailed insights. I imagine this is very challenging, but if you say the challenge and the efforts really pay out to take, this really sounds very interesting. Brenda has given us detailed insights in non-European markets, but you're focusing on in European markets. And I mean, we've just learned from Efi that Europe is leading in impact investing, a fact that personally really makes me happy for today. But why are you focused in the south of Europe? I mean, of course, you're based in Valencia, but there must be more reasons.
Yeah, there is a main reason. That is, I think the projects in the south of Europe, and I think it's something similar in the east of Europe, are under the radar and they are undervaluated. I've seen, and it's happened something similar because I have also experience working in Latin America. If you have been in Silicon Valley, you see that the people, the developers and the people there, they are not from the United States only. They are people from Spain, there are people from England, there are people from all around. So that doesn't mean that Americans are more clever than people in Europe. It happened the same in Europe. Scandinavian people are not more clever than Spanish people or Portuguese people. So when you see companies, the companies in Spain, the technology that is in Spain is not worse than companies in the UK. But when you see the valuation, a pre-seed company in the UK, it's worth 10 million, 8 million, while in Spain, we're investing in maybe 1 million valuation, 1.5, 800K. So the opportunity that is investing in Spain, that could be the open door to Latin America, how you can grow that company, the value that you can add. When you think about profitability, it's amazing the value that you can create. Investing in Italy, investing sometimes when we talk inside Europe, there are also emerging countries. For me, it's quite funny. Maybe funny is not the word, because when I'm doing fundraising and I talk to different investors all around Europe, it's a little bit awkward, because normally they say, no, we only invest in developing countries, and for them, developing countries is Africa, is Latin America, but there are also like two kinds of Europe. It's not the same Scandinavia than Southern Europe or East Europe. And I think it's also like really important that we work as a whole, that funds of funds that they are in Stockholm, that they are in Oslo, that they are in Munich or in London, they invest also in projects that they are in Romania, that they invest in Spain, that they invest in Greece, basically because we have like really powerful technologies, like with really good developers, with really good CEOs, with amazing technologies. So really, when we show the companies that we have in our portfolio, the users that they have, they think that it's amazing. I've been talking with people from Stockholm, from really good founders of Norskin or companies like that, and they see these companies and they say, okay, this company in my city is worth 20 million, and here is like 2 million. What's happening? No, and I think one of my missions is to try to be a speaker of what's happening in Spain, in other parts of Europe.
Thank you. From mission to vision, what is your personal investing vision, impact investing vision for the next decade?
Well, I really agree with what Brenda said, but talking more about what I think it's going to happen. I think what it's going to happen is like we are each time having more success stories of Serbian entrepreneurs here in Europe. You can see the case of Norskin that before I was talking before of Niklas, how he founded Klarna. And they feel after creating what for them was the goal of creating an impact startup, and raising that 1 billion valuation, that for them everything was winning money. And after that, they feel that, okay, with money, I am not happy at all. I can buy 200 things, but what is after? So I think that we are going to have a generation of successful entrepreneurs that they want to create purpose companies. We can call them impact companies, it's fine, but I think now everyone is using the concept impact. Just a company that pays salaries, for them is impact. So I don't know if the term is going to be impact, if it's going to be purpose companies. I don't know how we are going to call it. I think we should be like really severe and strict with the terms and how to measure it. But I think there is going to be a movement of entrepreneurs that they are like 2 times entrepreneur, 3 times entrepreneur, that wants to create things with purpose, and wants to create solutions that are going to help the world to be a better world. And I think especially in Europe, we are in debt, or we want to help people in Africa, people in Europe, because of the history that we have, because of the engagement that we have, especially in Spain with Latin America, for example, in order to help them to create good businesses, but not as a philanthropy, like sometimes American things, but as a business, how it is. No? When we think people that we invest in impact, we think about business as Tesla or back market or things like that, and not just as philanthropy that is like really necessary in the world and in the impact world, but as other kind of business, or not business, but part of the entire equation.
Thank you so much, Manu. Manu has mentioned some decisive details where he compared Southern European and Eastern European markets. Do you agree with him, or what is your impression of the Middle and Eastern European markets when it comes to impact investing in particular?
It's actually a very interesting perspective. I haven't think of it, Southern Europe that way. I can tell you, if you see it, Central Eastern Europe, it's only focusing on tech. Investors don't understand impact startups so much. While in the Nordics, for example, there are many impact investors that really understandable. We were talking about recently last week about comparing Israeli to US to European ecosystems, and I think I feel quite ashamed that also in my country people don't really understand the impact investing. And if I have an impact startup that I'm supporting in fundraising, I need to go to the Nordics. So that's why that's in the European perspective. But it's interesting that what Manuel said about Southern Europe.
Thank you, Ifi. I have many interesting questions of our participants coming in, and one is related to a topic you have just addressed in your part in a couple of seconds ago, meaning let's deep dive into technology. Henning has handed in the question that new trends in impact investment do need better orientation in new trends for technology. How, in your opinion, do investors get that orientation? And I'd like to hear Brenda's view first, because I like to have the global non-European market perspective at first.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I've been talking to a few impact investors recently about investing in fragile markets generally to get their own experiences, which would contrast with mine, and their own views. And all of them mentioned technology as a key opportunity to unlock the potential in fragile markets and markets in sub-Saharan Africa. So within the tech sector, I think perhaps there has been perhaps a focus on the tech itself without actually thinking about how that tech can be used and deployed to create impact. And even myself, I get proposals from a lot of youth entrepreneurs who are trying to set up an app to do this and an app to do that. And being significantly older than these people, I find myself asking, how are all of the world's problems going to be solved by apps? At the end of the day, someone still needs to do something, surely. So I think from an impact perspective point of view, I think it's helpful to think about what exactly that tech is achieving. If it's unlocking barriers to doing business like mobile money, then that is something that can really, really magnify impact, not just of that investment itself, but also the impact that other impact-oriented companies can have within the region. And also, another consideration in sub-Saharan Africa is the barriers to entry for tech are very low. So it's just as easy to set up a company building these kind of technologies in if it's an app type technology in Malawi, for example, as it is in London. As long as the internet connection is not too bad, then great things can be achieved. So in terms of linking that back to the original question, which was about investor expectations, I think if we can be realistic about investment returns and think about what the impact is, if should this this tech company be successful, then I think that is a much more comfortable fit into the impact investing sphere.
Thank you very much, Brenda. I'd like to hand over the next issue mentioned in the chat to our gentleman in the panel. Maxime states that education is pretty low in the charts in terms of investment. Efi and Manuel, do you share Maxime's view with regard to the European market in particular?
Yes, from my perspective, it's correct. There's not much, let's say, impact startups who are dealing with education, which is interesting. I think actually tech companies are dealing with education more, like more obvious tech companies, because, for example, the metaverse and how education will look at the metaverse. So all the, or not all, but many virtual and augmented reality companies are developing products about education in the metaverse, not considering that it's also going to make some impact, but is more profit oriented. So it's interesting, but I haven't met many interesting ed tech startups relatively to all the sustainability, carbon footprinting, ecotech, and so on startups.
Yeah, I think similar. Normally, there are some sectors. It depends. Like human resources, for example, it was not a really sexy sector some years ago, and now, for example, in Spain, we have Factorial and other companies that are like really attractive. I think it's similar with education. There are not like really big players, or maybe just two or three, but I think it happens also something that related with education, that you need like patient capital, because it's something that needs a long time in order to get profitability. So I think also that some of the important things that the European Investment Fund and other kinds of institutions need to do, that is important for the success of impact, are like different formulas of blended finance, of patient capital, because there are some kind of sector like gender equality, like education and all that, that they need more time in order to give this profitability. No, and I think for sure education is one of these sectors.
Thank you very much. What does it need to change your the current status you have just described? What you want for especially the European Union to change, not only in the education sector, but when it comes to impact and investing in general. Ify, you might want to start.
I think the legislation is the key. Once companies or profit companies will have legislation to report, to measure, to treat impact initiatives more seriously and highly connected to the business results, that will change the whole the way that the impact is being treated.
Brenda, do you agree?
Yes. Yeah. In principle, yeah, that leadership from government is incredibly important, because that brings with it credibility. But if we're looking at fragile and emerging markets, the bureaucratic responsibility that comes with European style legislation is huge, and it can be really detrimental to the performance of companies and the performance of investments. And the performance that investors can offer if they are trying to focus on these markets. So I think that there's, and I don't know what the answer is, but there must be some sort of balance that can be found where you still have that transparency and accountability enshrined somehow, but the way that it is implemented is lean and agile, and doesn't bring about it an unbearable administrative obligation or financial costs to the companies that can perhaps benefit from it the most in fragile and emerging contexts.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Manuel, what is your take-home message for our participants for today? What is the message you want our participants to leave with and continue their workday Wednesday?
Well, for me, the important message is that it's possible to win money creating a better world. That for me, that's an important message in order for everyone. And I think I would like to share just that sentence. I think when you put like 3 or 4 sentences, it's like really complex to remember. So just people like money, and people like to feel that they are useful. So you can invest and be useful for the society at the same time.
Thank you. Ify, what is your take-home message for our participants? If you're on mute.
Sorry, I lost you by technical connections. Can you repeat the question again, please?
Of course. What is your take-home message for our participants with regard to impact investing?
The take-home. Yeah, I think you just need to care. If you care, you will find a way to leverage the profit. You will find a way to leverage technology. I developed myself startups to develop women in business because of diversity problem, and I managed to make it profitable as well. And I managed to leverage AI to increase the impact for the end users. So I think it's doable. We just need to find the gaps and to care.
Thank you, Ify. Brenda, your take-home message for our participants?
Yeah, really chiming with the messages from Ify and Manu. I mean, all is not lost in the impact investing sphere. Impact investing has to be the way to invest in a sustainable future, which we all need.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Now it comes the hardest part of my job. I've seen so many great so many great issues being mentioned. I would have loved to make it more of a deep dive into the greenwashing topic, maybe next time. But we have the chance to continue this great discussion. I've seen a few more questions being unanswered. I'm very sorry for that. But please, dear speakers, dear participants, you're all most cordially invited, if your time allows it, to join in next week at 9 o'clock Central European Time at our Network and Business Opportunity meeting, where you can continue share your stance on impact investing, come up with solutions, introduce your company to the other participants. We let the networking continue. We have just started with this wonderful discussion. We've just started mentioning this great topic, and there are so many more things to deal with when it comes to impact investing. We are not done yet. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you, dear participants, for handing in the questions, for bearing with us. Thank you, dear speakers. As I said in the beginning, your contribution has made a decisive change, has made a decisive impact for fighting climate change, because for every presentation held, we plant a tree in Africa in order to support the climate action project there, and in order to help the world a bit to become a bit more of a better place. So thank you very much for coming, and goodbye. Have a nice Wednesday. Hope to see you soon, and do not forget, technology obliges. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I need to leave, Joyce. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you very much for coming.
See you.
Bye-bye.
You are currently the only person in this conference.